Buenos dias, maayong buntag santanan. Hey, it's Monday morning. I'm on a little bit earlier than usual. I think some of you will probably check us out a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and share from Psalm 6 this morning. Hey, I hope you had a great weekend. Vicky and I, aka Lola, had a wonderful weekend. 2 weekends in a row, actually. Last weekend we were up in Virginia reconnecting with some friends. This weekend, Friday afternoon, I picked up baby girl Eden, granddaughter number 4, and then went by and picked up the other 3 granddaughters. We went to their favorite restaurant, International House of Pancakes. Yes, we did. Had supper, went downtown, walked around. Eden's parents, Caleb and Lindsay, picked up Eden, took her home. We took the other 3 girls to our house for a sleepover. The next morning I got up and worked out, and the girls went for pedicures, and while they were doing that, hey Katrina, while they were doing that, I did some yard work. After the yard work, drank some water, took a deep breath, went 4-wheeling. Next thing you know, it's late. We take a nap. We get up yesterday and did a little video. Hey Liz, did a video before worship. Went by and prayed with a buddy of mine. Had a great experience at a celebration. If some of y'all are coming on and you were just blessed yesterday, put a thumbs up. Had some more folks get saved. Like the Lord's doing a stirring. The Lord's doing a stirring. We're seeing people get saved again. And so I'm grateful for that. It was a great day. Had a wonderful and powerful, refreshing. Some of y'all are clicking on right now. A couple of you, I see y'all. A couple of y'all were at my house last night, and y'all left after the meeting. And Vicky looks at me and goes, "They just refreshed you, didn't they?" I went, "Yes, they refreshed me." That's why I encourage y'all, man, be around people that are positive, be around people that love Jesus, be around people that are energy givers. I know the course of ministry and the nature of ministry is that we minister to all people, but I'm just saying, if all we do is surround ourselves with negative, we become negative. And so when we minister to a lot of negative, we need to surround ourselves with positive, encouraging, refreshing. Hey, Sarah. So some of y'all that are, hey, Rosie. So some of y'all that are checking on right now were in my house last night, and y'all refreshed me and you refreshed Vicky. Anyway, I say that to say this. So I get up this morning, and I have to admit to you, I'm a little bit weary. I'm a little bit weary physically. I went not too hard. I went hard over the weekend and probably didn't get enough rest. And so I woke up this morning spiritually refreshed, but a little bit physically weary. And then I read Psalm 6. And when I read Psalm 6, if you read it, and I had to go back and read it slowly, Psalm 6 is one of those tough to get through Psalms, kind of tough to read even, if I'm being honest. And David wrote Psalm 6. Psalm 6 is a psalm of lament, a psalm of complaint. And when you get to about, I'm going to look at my notes I wrote down here as I was reading through this morning. When you get to about verse 6, you can see that David has had a loss of sleep, and he's probably physically, emotionally, and spiritually, hey Lisa, drained or fatigued. Hey Sarah. And so he's writing this psalm in the midst of fatigue, at least physically, probably emotionally and spiritually, because you can see that he mentions his enemies coming against him. So he's done that in either Psalm 5 or 4, I can't remember, just a couple of days before. Mentioned yesterday in church is a theme already in Psalm 3, 4, 5, and now Psalm 6, and that is David's a man of prayer. David is a man of prayer. So this psalm is a psalm of lament or psalm of complaint. And what I've found in my own life is when I am fatigued, physically, emotionally, spiritually, or all three, sometimes it's all three wrapped up in one. When I'm fatigued, I am more prone to complain. How about you? Like when I'm strong physically, refreshed emotionally, and revived spiritually, I tend to not complain as much. David was at a place in his life where he brings his complaint or lament before the Lord. I remember years ago when I studied through the Psalms, I didn't even know there were Psalms of lament, Psalms of complaint. And yet there's a whole series of Psalms where David, watch this, the only one who's ever called a man after God's own heart, David complained to the Lord a lot. Nobody ever, it's kind of like the elephant in the room. Nobody ever mentions that. We always, we preach about David and Bathsheba, and that kind of briefly. And then everything is, David and Goliath and all David's victories and all the great Psalms he wrote. He wrote some Psalms of lament, some Psalms of complaint. If you look at David's life, man, like the enemy was constantly pounding him. We read a couple days ago about Absalom and his own son, coming against him and trying to take the kingdom from him. Well, anyway, when you read Psalm 6, David is in a season of weariness because the enemy is just pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding. He says, "O Lord, rebuke me not in your anger, neither chasten me in your hot displeasure. Have mercy upon me, O Lord, for I am weak." So he confesses he's weak. "O Lord, heal me, my bones are vexed." My bones are vexed. "My soul is also sore vexed. But you, O Lord, how long? How long are you going to let this go on, Lord? Return, O Lord, deliver my soul. Save me for your mercy's sake. For in death there is no remembrance of you. In the grave, who shall give you thanks? I am weary with my groaning all the night." Now he's complaining. "All the night make I my bed to swim with tears. I water my couch with tears. Mine eye is consumed because of grief. It waxeth old because of all my enemies." Excuse me, I got me all choked up this morning. Depart from me, all you workers of iniquity, for the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping." So even in his lament, he understands that God hears him. Now, later in Psalm 66:18, he writes that if I regard iniquity in my heart, God will not hear me. In other words, if I store up sin in my heart, if I know I have sin, I store it up, I don't release it, confess it, turn from it to the Lord, then God does not hear my prayer. Over and over and over, though, when David is praying, like Psalm 30, he'll go, "I cried to the Lord and he heard my cry." So David is confident when he brings his sin before the Lord and confesses his sin. When that's behind him, David has confidence the Lord listens to him. Listen. The Lord's heard my supplication. The Lord will receive my prayer. Let all my enemies be ashamed and sore vexed. Let them return and be suddenly ashamed. So what I want you to see here, and what grabbed me is, like, there's a lot to unpack there. Yes, David was fatigued, probably mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Yes, David complained. But in his complaint, David also confessed that his salvation was in the Lord. Like verses 4 and 5. Like, if I'm going to get delivered from this, the Lord himself is going to deliver me. Then he goes on and talks about his loss of sleep and his crying and his weeping before the Lord. But he concludes the matter by saying, "The Lord hears me." So that's what I want to encourage you with today. Because I'm talking to some folks, maybe somebody that's watching now, somebody will come back later and watch. I'm talking to some folks that are tired, that are weary. It is what it is. It's a fact. Some have been burning the candle at both ends. Some are weary of some physical things are happening in your body. Some, you still maybe have children or grandchildren or friends relationally where things are just all messed up and you're just tired, you're just weary. Does anybody bear witness? Wave your hand. Or maybe not now sometimes. Put a thumbs up emoji or something. You bear witness with that. So even the encouragement is, even in our weariness, even if it's a constant attack from the enemy, David never lost his faith. He became weary. He complained to the Lord, but the conclusion of the matter was, God hears me. And that's what I want to encourage you with today. As you take your complaint to the Lord, I'm actually comforted in the fact, because when I was growing up, like, nobody ever taught me about these lament psalms. And I'm sure nobody ever said it, but I had this idea in my head. If I complain to God, he's going to kill me. That was like my view of God. If I God's God and God's awesome and God's wonderful, but God's also a God of wrath. And if I complain to God, God's just going to kill me. No, no. Now, I'm not saying live in the complaint, but the lament in David's life was real. And if we're going to get real this morning, sometimes that's us. Sometimes we bring our complaints, our lament. The good news is God doesn't judge us for that. Like, God understands that. But also, God doesn't want us to stay in the complaint and the lament. What happens is, in the midst of your complaint and lament, see God at the end of it. That's what David did. Dave was kind of like, man, what the heck? How long is this going to last? But God hears my prayers. So David didn't stop praying in his calamity. David pressed in his calamity, because at the end of the day, David knew God hears his prayers. So that's what I want to encourage you with. If you're a disciple of Jesus, you're living your life in sanctification before the Lord. You don't have stored up sin in your heart. God hears your prayer. So even in your complaint, take your complaint to the Lord. Really, take your complaint to the Lord. I have a couple guys in my life that I tell, you can say anything to me. You can, when you're fed up with things and fed up with your employees and fed up with whoever it might be and just having you can call me. I'll listen. You can say whatever you want. I've even told you can use bad language if you want. There's just 2 words I ask you not to use. I won't judge you. I won't condemn you. You can use me as a sounding board. Just complain, because I'm not going to hold it against you. I'm going to release it and let it go. It's kind of the way God is. Take your complaint to the Lord. But don't be judgmental of God, but I'm just saying, take your complaint to the Lord before we take it to other people. And as you're in your lament before the Lord, because anguish is real, as you're in your lament before the Lord, you're going to see God at the end of it. And you're going to come to the conclusion, you know what? God does hear me. We're going to get to Psalm 30 before too long. And what David says is, God hears me, God helped me, and God healed me. God heard me, God helped me, and God healed me. So remember that today. Father, in Jesus' name, I pray as your people may be listening right now, bring a complaint or a lament before you. Thank you that you don't judge us. Thank you that they are your children that are coming before you. And I pray that they will see you at the end like David saw you at the end. Even in the midst of great anguish and turmoil and complaint, David knew that you were his salvation. You are my salvation. Now look at me before you hang up there. Just say, the Lord is my salvation. Tell the Lord, Lord, you are my salvation. If I get delivered from this, it's going to be because of you. Yes. Hey, do me a favor. You can go to the Celebration Thomasville Facebook page or my personal Facebook page. Our secretary, Debbie Howell, has worked diligently. She's turning these videos into podcasts, and we have a whole series of podcasts from the last year or so. If you want daily encouragements, go back. You can get on Spotify and other places. I don't remember right now. Do that. Send me a thumbs up or a thumbs down emoji. If these videos are a blessing to you, put them out there on your Facebook page. If you want to make a positive impact, but you just say, I don't know the words to say, but if I'm saying anything that brings life and encouragement and refreshment to you, it might do it to somebody else. So put it out on your Facebook page. Hey, God bless you. Y'all have a great day. I'll probably see you tomorrow.